Listen. 3 sentences to hook you. A flight attendant slaps a passenger mid-cabin. Phones flip up like saucers, and 10 minutes later the airline is a headline nightmare. Sounds unreal, right? But stick with me, because this is a real story about humiliation, quiet power, and the way a single small act can trigger something enormous. You ready? Act 1. The setup. 2 hours before takeoff. Dr. Maya Ellis walked onto Skyline Air Flight 212 like a ghost in plain sight, jeans frayed at the cuffs, an inexpensive hoodie pulled up, hair tied back in a messy bun. Maya could have sailed through the jetway with a private car and a parade of assistants. She didn't. She'd been doing these undercover rides for 5 years now, a program she'd launched to feel what customers felt, to catch bias and bad service with her own 2 eyes. Today, she asked for seat 24C in economy, deliberately unremarkable, and tucked a slim folder into her tote bag, the kind of folder that if you saw the header would make your stomach drop. The flight attendant on duty, Talia Reed, was 29, had worked for Skyline 6 years, and carried herself like someone who'd been given a uniform and a small slice of authority and never wanted to let it go. She'd earned praise for keeping flights efficient, which translated sometimes meant blunt force and zero patience. When Maya took the seat, Talia approached with that practiced firmness. Not rude yet, not kind, just sure of herself. "Ma'am, your ticket shows first class," she said loud enough for a few rows to hear her voice lubricated with contempt. "You can't just sit where you want." Maya looked up unclipped, a battery of calm. "I requested that seat," she replied, and handed over a printed confirmation. Talia blinked, dismissed the paper with a hand flourish as if it were a receipt for a dinner they both knew she couldn't afford. Around them, people began to lean in. Curiosity has its own heartbeat on an airplane. A college kid across the aisle pulled his phone out, the little red dot blinking live, because everything awkward now goes viral before the plane lands. Talia's tone turned sharp. "Look, sweetheart, I know games when I see them. We don't need any trouble on this flight." The words landed on Maya like little stones. A businessman 2 rows back snorted approvingly. A retired couple smiled the way people smile when they think rules are being reinforced. Maya stayed quiet, fingers tracing the edge of her folder, thinking, keep calm, document, collect. That's how you catch things that hide behind uniforms and policy memos. You let them show themselves. Act 2. The turning point. Talia grabbed Maya's phone, claimed it was company protocol, and when Maya reached for the tablet she'd been reading from Talia's hand, closed over it like a judge's gavel. "You people always pull this kind of stunt," she said, voice rising, trying to game the system. The phrase, "you people," landed heavy, a line painted on the floor between respect and contempt. Maya opened her mouth to explain, but Talia had already decided the story. Then it happened fast. Talia stepped closer, her finger jabbing down, and slapped Maya across the face. The sound was a crack that made half the cabin flinch. Glasses, scattered papers went airborne, and for a beat nobody moved. Not because they were shocked, but because their phones were already recording. Most of us imagine a slapping scene as messy and noisy, the victim wailing, the aggressor storming off. Maya didn't wail. She touched her cheek, composed herself like someone closing a briefcase after a storm, and said in a voice that was almost soft, "Thank you, Talia. That made my job much easier. You could have heard a pin drop." That sentence moved the dynamic from personal violence to deliberate evidence gathering. It flipped the script. People tend to think justice is either loud or slow, but here it was about immediacy. The live stream shot up from a few hundred viewers to tens of thousands in minutes. Comments poured in. Record everything, call the police, file suit. A man in row 18, who happened to be an assistant district attorney, started typing like his life depended on getting every detail down. Someone else uploaded the footage to several platforms. The plane turned into a raw wire of witnesses. Maya's folder spilled onto the tray. Quarterly reports, internal memos, a list of incident hotspots where complaints about bias had climbed. The header read Skyline Air, corporate oversight. She picked up the items with the composure of someone decades trained to manage crises, and when the cabin realized who she was, Not by guessing, but by seeing the little executive ID she finally raised, everything changed. Dr. Maya Ellis, Chief Operating Officer, Skyline Air. She announced, holding the badge up so every camera could catch it. The room's hubris collapsed into a heavy, awkward silence. That reveal is the twist. The person Talia thought she was asserting domination over was in fact the person who signed policies, the person who could mobilize lawyers and PR, the person whose phone called compliance and legal and federal authorities while the plane was still descending. You go from seeing a dominance display to watching the architecture of accountability being activated in real time. Act 3. The Aftermath and the Question. What followed was ugly and swift. Talia's bravado unraveled. Witnesses who cheered moments before shrank into their seats, suddenly aware that their applause had been for cruelty. Skyward communications lit up. A call to airport police, a patched-in notification to corporate headquarters, a mention of federal statutes. The assistant district attorney volunteered testimony. Flight 212 landed to a phalanx of officials. Talia was escorted off in handcuffs, her uniform a symbol of a job and a reputation collapsing in real time. Skyline Air's stock took a hit on the rumor cycles alone. Complaint lines flooded with angry callers. Social media became a courtroom that never sleeps. Maya didn't yell from the aisle or gloat. She did something quieter and more lethal in terms of impact. She set out the facts. She read off policy violations, federal statutes, and an immediate tally of internal reports that linked the incident to a pattern on this particular route. She spoke the language of accountability because that's the language systems respond to: evidence, witnesses, procedure. Her calmness wasn't distance, it was a tool to cut through chaos. Within weeks, the fallout led to changes: mandatory anti-bias training, a pilot program of random executive evaluations, and a passenger reporting app that guaranteed a timely investigation. The airline issued apologies, pledges a new oversight panel that included community advocates. Talia's case moved forward in the courts. The company had to reckon with where culture had failed and commit to fixing it. But here's where the story gets messy and why it's worth talking about. Did the outcome feel like justice or spectacle? For some, watching a uniformed employee face legal consequences felt like long overdue accountability. For others, there's a gnawing worry. Did we gaslight human complexity into a simple headline? Could that slap have been de-escalated earlier? Could training have prevented this at a human level, so there wouldn't be a criminal consequence followed by PR bandages? I want you to feel the human parts. Talia's panic as the world closed in, her voice cracking as she realized the magnitude of her action, her children's faces passing through her mind when officers led her away. I want you to feel Maya's quiet resolve, the way injustice collects like sediment across an entire career, and the decision to turn a humiliating moment into a lever for systemic change. These are both human beings, one who lashed out, one who harnessed the moment, and both outcomes ripple outward. So here's the open-ended part: reforms rolled out, policies changed, and a lot of people breathed easier. But systems don't heal overnight, and accountability needs ongoing muscle, training, oversight, consequences, and a culture change that doesn't wait until a camera catches you. The real victory would be a day where no one has to stage an undercover ride to see fairness, and where service workers get respect, support, and the tools to respond without fear. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed behavior that felt like bias, but you weren't sure what to do? Did you stay silent, or did you speak up? Do you think public shaming and viral exposure are the right roads to change, or do you worry about collateral damage? Drop a comment. Tell your story. Argue with me. Call me out. If this moved you, like and subscribe. Share with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, sometimes the quietest response is the most powerful, and sometimes a single act of courage can change more than one life.